right, coming to you live from Velocity here in Santa Clara with James Turnbull of Puppet Labs. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
So, I've seen you talk a bunch of places. What's your official title? And then what's the reality of what you do?
So, my official title is VP of Technical Operations, and that means the customer-facing parts of the Puppet Labs business. So, services, support, education and training, operations, and similar sort of functions.
And so who are some of the customers that you can talk about that are secretive that you guys are working with?
Probably, I guess the customer, at Velocity, the customer most people know here is Zynga, obviously the game company. We're very heavily represented in similar sorts of, Disney, a bunch of the sort of media companies. We're very heavily represented in government and military, and particularly of late financials, so the New York Stock Exchange, the Bank of America, similar organisations. I think actually we worked out the other day there are only 2 exchanges, as in 2 stock exchanges in the world that don't use Puppet. So we thought that was pretty cool. And hopefully we're not responsible for any market crashes.
Well, there you go. Not responsible for Weimar Germany or anything like that. I think that was something completely different. But so it sounds like you guys are international as well then.
Yes, we have an office in London. So
Okay.
we have a number of customers in the UK, Benelux, France and Germany. Obviously there's a big open source Puppet community in Europe, and there's an increasingly large commercial customer base there. Obviously being heavily represented in financials, we have lots of customers in New York, and as a result lots of corresponding customers in London.
And how would you say is the most typical way that people use Puppet, and then where might be some of the more innovative ways that you've heard of?
Sure. I think a typical customer really has a management problem. They have virtual machine sprawl, or they don't really understand what's out in their environment, or they're not quite sure. They're not sure how to manage things, and sort of their environment is somewhat gotten out of control. So most of our customers are typically looking to say, there's a few key things about my environment I'd like to manage, my DNS or my SSH keys, and then they grow from there and they say, well, actually I can actually manage applications, I can actually manage whole stacks, I can actually start deploying applications, and we find that it becomes sort of viral. They find that they become sort of addicted to automating things, which is really cool. Probably most innovative, though they rarely talk to us about it. The Google guys have a pretty amazing setup. They've got a significant number of their internal staff develop Puppet code to support various things, and they have a very innovative way of doing testing, and they allow developers to sort of get slices of Puppet masters and do some pretty exciting things. We have a number of customers for whom are doing really interesting compliance things. Who have government or SOX or PCI DSS regulations sort of stuff. We're sort of seeing we're supplanting tools like Tripwire in many cases, which is really interesting because obviously I came from a security background and I spent a lot of time as a Tripwire customer, and it's kind of cool to see people using Puppet to do stuff like that. The most cool one I heard recently, we have a customer that does retail point of sale systems, and they used to ship DVDs around the country to upgrade their point of sale systems at every store. They now run Puppet, and they've gone from a turnaround of 3 to 4 days of the next version of their point of sale software to like 10 minutes. And I think that's a pretty incredible sort of outcome, particularly for an organisation that was used to sort of having, there's 4 stores in the Midwest that have lost the DVD and we need to fly somebody out there to fix something, and now it's entirely automated.
So, and then just to conclude with kind of a bigger vague question is, so DevOps all the rage these days. I saw you speak at DevOps Days Austin. And when people talk about DevOps, they always talk about the main tools of Chef and Puppet as being part of it. So to what extent have you guys been taking the DevOps mantle and running with it, and to what extent do you think it really does make sense? So how do you align with DevOps, and where do you use it to your advantage?
So obviously one of the key tenets of DevOps is automation. I mean, you want to do things better and smarter, and with you have more to manage. You have the same or sometimes less resources to manage it. Configuration management and automation. Obviously we have Collective as well, which is an orchestration suite. I think a fairly key sets of sort of tooling around DevOps. I'd also say that the cool thing about automation tools like Puppet is that it kind of encourages some of the good behaviours that you want to do in DevOps. The whole cooperation and coordination thing is that, if you would like your test environment, your dev environment, and your production environment to look the same, and you choose a tool like Puppet to do that, then you have to actually start to have conversations with the guys that live in that test and dev environment. And when you start to have those conversations, the objective is obviously to make it a consistent environment so it's easy to deploy software. But you sort of force people into these behaviours. They have to, they suddenly start to have to be, a bit more DevOps in their approach. And I think we're seeing more and more of even big enterprise customers are they're actually saying, well, this DevOps stuff, it seems a bit scary, but maybe if we had something that we can build a sort of a deployment around, or we can build a particular greenfields opportunity, and they work out that, wow, this DevOps stuff is as simple as having a conversation with the guys that, here's the guys that make the product and we're the guys that deploy it. We can just sit there and have a conversation, and if we've got something to talk about, which is the fact that we'd like to introduce a new tool, or we'd like to make the process a bit more streamlined, all of a sudden they're actually doing DevOps things, and they're like, oh, we're really hip, like those hip West Coast guys, and we're actually in the DevOps game.
So I lied. Okay, one last question.
Sure.
So to what extent do you are your users ops versus developers?
I would say the vast majority of, well, it's hard to say. I think about 60% of our customers are probably operations people. Obviously, Puppet had a big base in that world, and sysadmins are our traditional customer. We see a lot more developers than we used to. A lot of developers, a lot of DevOps comes out of the fact that, and Patrick DeBar, for example, is technically a developer rather than an ops person, came out of developers' frustration with the fact that operations weren't responsive to their needs, operations frustration with the application development, and them producing code that they felt was hard to deploy or hard to deal with. So we see more and more developers come out of the woodwork and go, if we force this tool down and we persuade our operations department to move a bit forward, then we all have wins out of that. The operations department, gets automation, we get better deployment. There's none of these 4 a.m. phone calls trying to work out, who the hell broke the build. We see it. It's probably, I'd say about 60-40 split. We see a lot of security people as well. Probably more so than most of the other vendors.
They're weird people, aren't they?
They are a little bit, yes. Speaking as a former security person, but yeah, we see quite a lot of them come out of the woodwork as well, because consistency of configuration is obviously encourages security. I mean, if anything you can do to defeat entropy is obviously really good.
Excellent, James Turnbull. Thank you so much.
Thank you.